You want to improve in every area, but looking at Montreal, we were definitely lacking in the straight.
Listen, guys, Max Verstappen just walked into Monaco and did something nobody expected. Hold on, because while everyone was writing Red Bull off, Max quietly showed up P3 in practice, refused to apologize to his own team, backed the FIA on the regulations drama, and then docked his brand new Superyacht right in the Monaco harbor like he owns the place. Today, we're breaking down 7 things Max did this week that prove he is the most interesting man in Formula One right now. Let's get into it. But before, if you want more updates and news on Max, then hit that like button and subscribe for more breakdowns. The Monaco practice surprise. So let's start with the thing that genuinely shocked people this weekend. Red Bull has been struggling badly all season. They're sitting 4th in the Constructors, and Max is 7th in the Drivers' Championship on just 43 points. Coming into Monaco, nobody was expecting much from him. Even Max himself said before the weekend, Monaco can always give you some surprises, but realistically, the bumps and curbs are where we're not that great. And then Friday happened. Ferrari went 1-2 in both practice sessions. Leclerc topped FP1, Hamilton topped FP2, but right behind them both times, Max Verstappen. He had one of his most impressive Fridays of the entire 2026 season, finishing P3 in both sessions, just 0.168 seconds off the pace-setting Ferrari in FP2. Meanwhile, Mercedes, the team that had won every single race this season, was getting outpaced by Red Bull. George Russell himself admitted that Red Bull had been a bit of a surprise for them this weekend. Nobody saw that coming, refusing to back down on Red Bull criticism. Now, this connects directly to what happened the race before in Canada, and it is actually a really big deal. In Montreal, Max went public and said his team ignored his setup feedback during qualifying. He qualified P6, which for a 4-time champion in a sport he's dominated for years, is honestly embarrassing. And instead of staying quiet about it, he basically called his own engineers out in front of the entire world. Then Monaco Media Day comes around and journalists obviously asked him, "Do you regret saying that?" And Max didn't flinch. He confirmed the matter was discussed internally, but stood by every word, saying the Canada direction wasn't progress at all, and that it needed to be analyzed and clearly understood before moving forward. What makes this fascinating is that he actually explained his whole philosophy behind it. He said, "I always try to keep everyone sharp anyway. I simply wasn't happy during that qualifying session because things weren't working well. Then that's why I gave my honest opinion." And then he added something really interesting. He said that Red Bull usually listens to him very well. So Canada was the exception, not the rule. That's not a guy who's falling out with his team. That's a guy who refuses to let standards drop. Respect that or hate it. That's just Max. The FIA backing and the 2026 Ultimatum. Okay, so now we get to the biggest story of Max's week, and honestly, one of the biggest stories in Formula One right now. You probably already know that Max has been furious with the 2026 regulations all season. He called them anti-racing. He called them Formula E on steroids. And at one point, he was seriously considering walking away from the sport entirely when his contract ends. But something shifted in the last 48 hours. Max offered the FIA his full backing to make the right call on moving to a 60-40 power unit split for 2027, favoring internal combustion over electrical power. That's a massive change in tone from a guy who was threatening to quit just weeks ago. In Monaco, he said, "Let's wait and see what comes out." And coming from Max Verstappen, that's practically a standing ovation. The key deadline here is June 14th. That's when the FIA needs to make a final call on these regulation changes. Max is watching. The whole paddock is watching. And if it goes through, Formula One keeps its most exciting driver. If it doesn't, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. The crash joke and Superyacht life. All right, let's lighten things up for a second, because Max also gave us some genuinely funny content this week. In Canada, he was already joking that he might need to order a new back just to survive Monaco's bumpy streets in the RB22. Classic Max, the car is physically destroying him, but he's cracking jokes about it. And then there's the Superyacht situation. Max's yacht, called Unleash the Lion, is currently docked right in Monaco's Port Hercule. It's a 33-meter Mangusta Grand Sport delivered in 2025 and can host 12 guests with a dedicated crew of 5. And if you think that's wild, sitting right next to it is a 118-meter hydrogen-powered giga yacht. Monaco really is on a different planet. Transfer silly season and Zach Brown's comments. Now quickly on the transfer rumor front, because this keeps coming up every single week. People keep asking where Max goes after Red Bull. Mercedes? Ferrari? McLaren? Well, McLaren CEO Zach Brown has completely shut that door, making it crystal clear that Max joining McLaren is not happening. Meanwhile, Max himself said at Monaco Media Day that he has zero interest in signing a Red Bull contract extension anytime soon, even though he's locked in until 2028. And on top of all that, his longtime race engineer, Gianpiero Lambiase, the guy who's been in his ear for years, is heading to McLaren. So the team around Max is quietly changing, even if Max himself isn't going anywhere just yet. Max's savage takedown of F1 social media culture. And then there's the Juan Pablo Montoya drama, which is honestly peak 2026 F1 content. Montoya went on a podcast and said that drivers like Max should face actual consequences for publicly criticizing Formula One and its regulations. He basically told Max to show more respect for the sport. Max's response? Brutal. He accused Montoya of talking nonsense and implied he was only making controversial statements to stay relevant in the media. Then he dropped this line that really stuck with people. Sometimes I can read people quite easily, and someone gives you a certain feeling, good or bad. When I'm done with someone, I'm really done with them. That's not a comeback. That's a door being permanently closed. Montoya did respond and tried to defend himself, but honestly, after that, the internet had already moved on. What happens next? So let's wrap this up. This week, Max Verstappen surprised everyone in Monaco practice with a P3, refused to apologize for publicly calling out his own team, backed the FIA on regulation changes that could decide his entire future in Formula One, cracked jokes about his backbreaking, flexed a super yacht in the harbor, got confirmed as untouchable in the transfer market, and absolutely ended Juan Pablo Montoya in under 2 sentences. Here's my honest opinion. Max is actually more interesting to watch this season when he's not winning. When he was dominating, it was predictable. Now, every weekend is a story. And I'll leave you with this: if the FIA doesn't push through those regulation changes before the June 14th deadline, do you think Max actually walks away from Formula One? Drop your answer in the comments. See you next time.